land use matters, as well as the visual quality and aesthetic characteristics of the city. Today's agenda includes requests for design alternates from the city's Unified Development Ordinance. When hearing requests for design alternates, the commission sits as a quasi-judicial body and conducts an evidentiary hearing on their requests. That means it's like a court hearing. State law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this commission must make its decisions. The commission's decisions are constrained by the standards in the city's ordinance and the facts presented at the hearing. The commission hears and considers evidence presented at the hearing and applies the standards set forth in state law and the city's ordinance. The commission must base its decisions upon competent material and substantial evidence presented at the hearing. If you'll be speaking as a witness, please focus on the facts and the standards, not personal preference or opinion. This meeting is open to the public and everyone is welcome to watch. However, participation in the evidentiary hearings is limited. Parties have right to participate fully. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Witnesses may testify as to facts to which they are competent to testify, so long as those facts relate to the legal standards. In addition, lay or non-expert witness testimony is limited to facts, not opinions. For certain topics, the commission needs to hear opinion testimony from expert witnesses. These topics include projections about impacts on property values and projections about impacts on traffic safety. Okay. As a reminder to the commissioners, if you will please try to speak into the microphone so that way those online can hear you. We will now open the evidentiary hearing for item DA 9, 2025. Casey or Keegan, if you'll come forward. And before you start, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you. So this is DA 9. This is a collection of properties located along Compassionate Drive and also Rock Quarry Road. And this case came before you last month. We have placed it under the new business section because they have updated their request, and so we had to re-advertise. One thing I want to note is that the request and information you're seeing in your staff report reflects sort of a more expansive version of the request because they were still working out the design once the notice period came up. So they are going to provide you with sort of the final design, and that will sort of constrain the request that you're seeing in your staff report. So we did that just to kind of keep them on track and make sure that the notice was sufficient, but as stated, they've now finalized their design, and so it will be tailored down a bit, and they have some information to provide to you in their presentation. And so in the interest of time, I'm happy to kind of stop it there and turn it over to the applicant team so they can provide you with that update.
Okay. The applicant will now present evidence and legal arguments in support of the request. As a reminder, any evidence and argument must focus on the applicable standards. Before you begin, if you would please state your name, address in relation to the case.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Kraut. I'm an attorney at Smith Anderson. I'm here on behalf on the applicant. My address is 150 Fayetteville Street, Suite 2300, Raleigh. Just as a little bit of background, we were here back in October. This design request, again, is to facilitate the development of about a 200 unit affordable housing project at 2340 Compassionate Drive. As Keegan said, we advertised, very broadly for this meeting because we were still working out the design. But the key takeaways that we took from the October meeting were that sidewalks along one side of Compassionate Drive were acceptable to this commission given the site constraints. You asked us to consider moving the sidewalk from the eastern side of Compassionate Drive over to the western side. And you asked for a little bit more information on landscaping, lighting, and safety measures. So that's what we're here to kind of go through today. We did talk with transportation staff about their concerns. I think that was the main kind of holdup at the last meeting. And they did provide an updated staff response that is in the staff report that notes that this new design addresses their concerns about uncontrolled crossings. So this revised design alternate request slide kind of gives us the new overview of what we're asking for. We would ask that this presentation be entered into the record.
So received. Thank you.
And that this specific slide would be used to kind of control any design alternate requests.
Okay.
So for this, just going to kind of go through and then I'll walk through each specifically with images and pictures. For the first section of Compassionate Drive from that 0 to 710 feet, we are flipping the sidewalk from the eastern side to the western side, and essentially from our last hearing, just flipping exactly what we asked for. For the northbound side, for the northbound rest of the property, the big change is we've eliminated sidewalk along the entirety of the eastern side of the Compassionate Drive right-of-way. This was in conjunction with conversations with transportation staff to eliminate those uncontrolled crossings that they were concerned about. So here on the screen is generally an overview of the updated exhibit and site plan, which hopefully you received in your packet. You have the just 0 to 710 feet, that middle section, which will support the 200-unit affordable housing development, and that last section that connects with Marblestone Way. And again, I'll be going through each of these specifically in a moment. So for that first section, what we're doing on the east side of Compassionate Drive, this is just compares the UDO requirements to the alternate requested. We're asking for the eastern side, there be no parking. We're reducing the planting area from 6 to 5 feet, and we're removing the requirements for the sidewalk maintenance strip and utility placement easement. On the western side, again, removing that parking lane because this is the area where we only have about 50 feet. Going from a 6-foot planting area to a 5-foot, and reducing the utility placement easement to 3.5 feet. So what that looks like practically on the site plan, just go through it. You can see the sidewalk is along that western portion. And then one of the things that you asked us to address was additional safety concerns. And so we, in talking with transportation, provided kind of locations of speed humps along Compassionate Drive to control just the speed along that portion. This is what that cross section would look like with the design alternates. You can kind of see what the existing Compassionate Drives looks like to the right on the slide. And this is just that cross section showing kind of how the spacing will lay out. And then we did want to provide some kind of updated renderings of what this would look like. Again, we are, as we mentioned in the last presentation, looking to put a traffic signal at the intersection of Rock Quarry and Compassionate Drive. So you see the sidewalk along that western side, the controlled crossing from the eastern side to the western side. We will have plantings along the eastern side for the neighbors. Currently, there is that chain link fence there. We think that is the HOA's fence because it runs pretty much the entirety of that subdivision. We will be reaching out to the HOA to see if they would like us to replace that with a kind of a 6-foot wooden privacy fence. Again, that's not part of the design alternate request necessarily, but just to kind of give you context of last time we talked a lot about neighbor concerns about buffering between the neighborhood and the road. So that's one of the things that we'll be potentially working with the neighbors on. And then this is what that street section would look like a little bit further into the site. You asked to provide a little bit more about our landscaping plan. This is kind of where we're at right now in our ASR process. We have willow oaks and tulip poplars along the western portion as kind of those street trees, and we're hoping to be able to do the arborvitae along the eastern side of Compassionate Drive to give that kind of buffered look. Again, we're in the middle of site plan review, so landscape will be reviewing this, but this is kind of our desired approach. For the middle section, which is a section that'll house the 200 affordable units, our design alternate request is asking for no parking on the east side of the center line and for no sidewalk along the east side of the center line, and that's the big change here. And we'll show you it on the screen. So you can see that the sidewalk continues to run on the western side with the utility placement easement, the maintenance easement, but we've removed it from the eastern side of the center line of Compassionate Drive. We've also, again, in talking to transportation staff, have put a speed bump in the designs. There will also be 2 stop signs at the kind of entrances to the apartment buildings. This is what that cross-section would look like based on the design alternates here. See, we have everything on that kind of western side of the center line and the reduced kind of no parking and planting on the eastern side. One of the things that we liked about removing the sidewalk is it does give us more area to plant trees and provide additional buffers to those neighbors in the subdivision. And this is our anticipated landscape plan. You can see we have a mix of kind of large trees and shrubs throughout the site. But again, really listening to those neighborhood concerns, and not only did removing the sidewalk along that eastern side kind of prevent uncontrolled crossings that transportation was worried about, it also helped us kind of meet those buffer requirements and neighbor concerns. For the final portion of Compassionate Drive, we're asking for no parking on either side. And then on the eastern side, no parking, and again, no sidewalk. So here's what that will look like. There is a sidewalk that will come out of Marblestone Way right here. See, my touch screen isn't working, but there's a sidewalk there. It'll end at the corner, but there will be kind of a 4-way anticipated stop and crosswalks. And again, this is what the cross-section will look like and the landscape plan for that area. You know, there were many factors, I think we discussed this kind of in depth at our last meeting, that affect the developability of this site, including, you know, the UDO provisions that require us to have, you know, public right-of-way frontage, 2 access points, the NCHFA requirements for parking. We're trying to squeeze, you know, 280 parking spots on this site. The topography and wetlands prevents us from kind of shifting in further, and the neighborhood feedback. We also do have timing considerations. So now that we've resolved kind of the issues with transportation, we do hope that we're able to kind of move through this process tonight with your approval so that we can kind of meet our timing concerns for the NCHFA deadlines and to get these affordable housing units started. With that, we talked about this last time, and the kind of findings for each of these are the same. We do believe that these design alternates are consistent with the intent of 8.5. Compassionate Drive would have to be improved no matter what went on this site. This new design kind of even does a better job at not increasing congestion or compromising safety. We have our traffic engineer and site and plan engineer here to provide any additional testimony or answer any questions you have on that. We're not creating any additional maintenance responsibilities for the city. Our plans are certified by the engineer. It won't impact stormwater collection and conveyance. This is actually even further reducing the grading and the impacts on the site. And it's all reasonable within the context of, you know, Compassionate Drive is a private road that needs to be improved for any development here, and we do have significant site constraints. So we have all our experts here if you have any further questions, but really wanted to say thank you for your feedback last time. I think we listened and worked with transportation staff and came up with a better plan for the development of this project. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Any commission questions at this time for the applicant?
I do have one. Do you have a detail of what the intersection at Rock Quarry would look like?
We don't yet, but I can have my the traffic engineer come up and talk a little bit more about that.
And before you start, if you'll say your name, address, relation to the case, and I'll swear you in.
Travis Flewitt with Kimley Horn Associates, 421 Fayetteville Street, Suite 600, Raleigh, 27601. Transportation engineer here on behalf of the applicant. We're still in coordination.
Hold on one second.
Sorry.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
We are still coordinating with NCDOT. I think we are very, very, very close to having their approval of a traffic signal at that intersection. So we will be, assuming they say yes, we will be moving the existing pedestrian crossing that's to the east of this intersection, removing that and incorporating crosswalks at the intersection of Compassionate and the school driveway across the street, providing signalized pedestrian crossings at that intersection. And there's already a center turn lane, so left turn lanes onto Compassionate and into the school.
And would you also have that crosswalk or crossing, even if there wasn't a signal, if it was?
So we would have one across Compassionate Drive for sure, particularly with this design to get pedestrians from there to their sidewalk on the east side.
Okay.
At a
you.
minimum, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Travis?
Actually, I have it for Travis too. For the two entrances and exits of the driveway, can you speak to where the stop location is? And I see I'm trying to compare the landscape plans and where the stop locations are and how the site distance is coming out of those driveways.
Yeah, I think I don't know if this is going to work. Maybe the mouse. No touchscreen. Okay. So the crosswalks are right there crossing the driveways. I do not know where the stop bars would be. It may be a situation where you pull past the crossing up to the stop bar, or we set the stop bar back and people pull forward. I don't know if we've done a striping plan that detailed, but that's the current thought.
Okay.
And I can just speak to that. We're not asking for any design alternates on that western side. So we know that kind of the crossings and the landscape plans for that are going to be a conversation that we continue to have with transportation and the landscape review team as we go through the ASR process. Yep.
Okay. Not seeing any other questions. Are there any members of the public who are here tonight to speak on this case? Seeing none. Commission, any questions for staff related to this case? Okay. Applicant, anything further? All right, we will now close the hearing and bring the matter to the table. As a reminder, this commission is tasked with deciding if, based on the evidence presented, this proposal meets the applicable standards. This decision cannot be based on the personal preference of commission members. Rather, it is based on the standards and evidence. If based on its deliberation, the commission requires additional evidence, the commission will reopen the hearing. If you don't mind navigating us back to the findings, thank you. And then for matter of record, we've got 10 commissioners here tonight. So our standing practice is the most senior alternates would then participate. So fortunately, Kate, that means that you're sitting this case out. We'll need you later for a case where we have a recusal. So that means that Brian, Dylan are alternates that will be voting, and then Brooke, I believe, is a regular member as of this meeting today. So hopefully that clears that. So when we get to voting, those will be the 9. Okay. Would someone like to walk us through design alternate or start discussion on this case? I should say design alternate findings.
I mean, I appreciate them listening to the feedback that we gave the last time. I think moving that sidewalk to the west side is a huge improvement for safety, because I think most of the people using that sidewalk are going to be coming from that housing development. And given the constraints of that part of the site, it is, in my opinion, completely reasonable what they're asking for, and the way that they've designed that section, that first however many feet off of Rock Quarry Road. And then also that the constraints that are at the other end of Compassionate Drive. Yeah. So those are my thoughts.
Anyone else with thoughts, concerns? I was not here for the first presentation of this, but I do appreciate, seems like feedback given and adjustments made have, significantly improved. So I appreciate that responsiveness. Just to go down some of the findings here, consistency, yes, in terms of the intent, and I don't think it compromises safety or congestion, doesn't increase additional maintenance, and I think it actually improves stormwater collection. And then, given the unique characteristics of this site, I agree that's not physically advantageous necessarily. So the design alternate is warranted in that regard. So seeing no other discussion, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Would someone like to make that motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Roberts. All those in favor? So the motion is to approve with the materials presented tonight as of what we're approving on without condition. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. The Commission's written decision will be adopted when the minutes of this meeting are adopted, and the written decision will be provided to the applicant and other parties with right to such notice following adoption of the decision. Thank you. Okay. Casey or Keegan, who's presenting the next case? Okay, so next on the agenda is DA 11-2025, 8415 Honeycutt Road. And we now have Kat, which, Kat, you're a regular member, so you'll be in, and when we close for deliberation, I'll identify who's the right. All right, Keegan.
All right, thanks. So this is DA 11-2025, the property address 8415 Honeycutt Road. You can see here it's near the intersection of Honeycutt and Falls of Neuse. So what's being proposed is a 26 lot, there's 26 buildable detached house lots for this particular subdivision. And the requests are both transportation related. So one relates to what they're calling proposed street A. So that's a neighborhood yield street type. And their design alternate is to provide no sidewalk on the north side of the cross section. I realize it's a little difficult to see on this particular image, but to the south, they are providing a 10-foot multi-use path, which is one of the zoning conditions that's applicable to the property. So that is in effect their alternate, providing that multi-use path in exchange for not providing the sidewalk on the northern side. And I'll let them to go into more detail. And then the second request relates to the planting strip width along Honeycutt Road. So that's an avenue, 2-lane divided street. So this is out towards the perimeter of the site, existing street. So they are having to bend around either a utility or telephone pole for that planting strip. So they're choosing to narrow the planting strip so they can maintain sort of that same width sidewalk that would sort of curve around the pole in that one particular location. So my understanding is the extent of the request is just to narrow the planting strip in that one location so they can safely navigate the sidewalk around that obstruction. Here are the findings for street cross sections, which I'm happy to bring back up at any point in the conversation. And I think that concludes my talking points, but happy to answer any questions or pass it over to the applicant.
Okay. I think we're ready for the applicant. And before you begin, if you will state your name, address in relation to the case, please.
Great. And I'll have Peter Canasson come up here as well if we want to get sworn in at the same time. Michael Birch, land use attorney with Longleaf Law Partners, 4509 Creemore Road, Suite 302, Raleigh 27612.
Peter Canasson, Jones Canasson Engineering, 221 North Salem Street in Apex.
And do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Thank you.
Again, Michael Birch here on behalf of the applicant. Again, Peter Canasson, project engineers here, as well as the developer, Andy Samman. Keegan identified our two alternate requests. I will kind of focus on the request as to Street A first, and then also focus on the Honeycutt Road request. So just to orient you, Falls of the Neuse down here to the south, Honeycutt Road running north-south, Lafayette Village down there at the intersection of Falls and Honeycutt. About a little over 14-acre site, Bent Tree subdivision to our west. You can see that Chatterson Drive terminates into the western boundary of this property. Zoned R6 conditional use. We recently went through the rezoning process, added a number of zoning conditions. This was approved by council on, I believe, June 2nd of this year. And I'll kind of speak to the conditions and how that relates to why we are here. You'll see the little raindrops on there. That is because we are in the Falls Watershed Protection Overlay District. The reason why that is important is that that overlay district imposes an impervious surface area standard of 30%, which is much more restrictive than outside of the Falls Watershed Protection Overlay District. So the zoning conditions, I'm not going to read these, but I want to just give you a sense of what they are and why they are relevant. So first, condition 6 essentially states that we are not allowed to extend Chatterson through our site, providing a vehicular connection from Bent Tree out to Honeycutt Road. So as part of our zoning case, that vehicular connection between Bent Tree and Honeycutt Road was prohibited. Condition 7, and I'll kind of identify these on the subdivision plan on the next slide, but condition 7 speaks to a requirement of a multi-use path, 10-foot wide multi-use path between where Chatterson terminates and where it hits our internal public street. Okay, 10-foot multi-use path requirement. Condition 8 speaks to the street cross sections for this internal public street. We worked with staff throughout the rezoning case because we were prohibiting that vehicular connection. They wanted, and because we were providing that 10-foot wide multi-use path between Chatterson and our street, they asked that we consider providing a 10-foot multi-use path along our street so that there is a continuous 10-foot wide path from Chatterson to Honeycutt Road. But because we knew that that is different than the city's standard street cross-section, we knew we'd have to go through the design alternate process. We can't commit to that in a condition, and we also can't say that we're going to do something less than the code in the condition, and so we had to set it up this way. The two options: provide a 10-foot wide multi-use path on one side with no sidewalk on the other side, or just do the standard cross-section, 6-foot wide sidewalks on each side. When this was raised, the request for the 10-foot wide multi-use path was raised during the rezoning. It was also in the context of, a 6-foot sidewalk on the south side. We said, listen, we can do a 10-foot wide multi-use path on one side, but because of this very restrictive impervious surface limit imposed by the Watershed Overlay District, we're only going to agree to do the 10-foot wide multi-use path if we don't have to provide the 6-foot sidewalk on the other street. So it's essentially a net no impact on our impervious surface limit. So kind of the decision in front of the board today is allow for a 10-foot wide multi-use path on one side with no sidewalk, or just have us operate with a 6-foot on either side. So this is the subdivision plan. Again, I guess I'm not able to draw on this, but you can see here on the west side of the cul-de-sac, that is the 10-foot wide multi-use path required by condition 7. Then once it hits the cul-de-sac, this is showing the 10-foot wide multi-use path around the cul-de-sac and all the way out to Honeycutt Road with nothing on the north side. During the rezoning process, there was a level of comfort on the staff side with no sidewalk on the north side because, and we were showing them our site plans during this, even though it can't get approved during the rezoning, that only 10 lots would have to cross the road to get to the multi-use path, right? And it's on a dead-end street, right? So the volume of traffic, the frequency of traffic, et cetera, incredibly low. If the request, is denied and we go with a 6-foot sidewalk on either side, then we would still have this one segment of 10 feet, but then it would just connect to 6 feet. Again, this is just the cross section if we need to discuss that. We're providing everything else, the 6-foot wide planting strip on both sides, et cetera. And this just gives you kind of a plan view of a segment there, providing the full right-of-way, full back-to-back, just a change to the sidewalk requirement. Again, that's a zoom in there. And we can focus on these standards if we need to. Okay. So just switching to Honeycutt Road briefly, Keegan identified that one area where we are asking to essentially narrow the verge of the buffer between the bike lane and the sidewalk. Right, city has new cross sections where both the sidewalk and the bike lane are above the curb now. The standard is between those two that there is a 6-foot wide planting area between those. So we are asking for that in that one area to be reduced so that we do not have to move the power pole. And again, that was a discussion we had with transportation throughout the rezoning process about what the cross-section was going to be. This is a DOT road. We didn't want to be in a position of having to shift a curb line that would impact the power pole, and same for the improvements within the right-of-way. So I will speak to the standards, right, in terms of the intent of Article 8.5, provide adequate travel lanes, not just for vehicles, but cyclists and pedestrians. And, we think that the 10-foot wide multi-use path continuous from Chatterson out to Honeycutt meets that intent instead of two standard 6-foot wide sidewalks on either side. Does not increase congestion or compromise safety. Again, we think that the 10-foot wide multi-use path provides, one, does not increase congestion, right? The street itself is a dead-end street. Doesn't compromise safety. Again, low volume, low frequency, very short back-to-back section to cross from the north side to the south side with a 10-foot multi-use path, only for 10 lots. And again, as to Honeycutt, we're preserving the full width of the bike lane and the sidewalk by reducing that buffer. Does not create additional maintenance responsibilities for the city. Again, 10-foot wide multi-use path is standard, not standard in terms of the requirements, but it will often exist within the right-of-way. So we don't think it creates any additional maintenance here. Same for Honeycutt Road. Certified by Peter Knassen, will not adversely impact stormwater. Again, we are complying with all the stormwater regulations and the impervious surface limitations, all of which are more stringent in the watershed than outside. And is reasonable in in terms of transitioning from a different street cross-section. Again, Honeycutt Road is different to our north and to our south. And again, we think it's appropriate to not have to move the pole and still provide a safe enough distance between the bike lane and the sidewalk. And in terms of for Street A, right, this is only one segment. This is one block, essentially. And we think it's appropriate, again, for the 10-foot wide multi-use path. So myself, Peter, here to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I think there'll probably be some questions from the commission. Commissioner Thompson?
Yeah, can you clarify one more time why we're here? If this is a zoning condition?
Yes.
What we're,
So our zoning condition, while we can, through zoning conditions, prohibit a vehicular connection or exempt ourselves from block perimeter, it is not an allowable condition to alter the street cross-section standards. Now, neighbors were on board, planning commission, council, right, were supportive of the 10-foot wide multi-use path, but we did not have a way in a zoning condition to mandate it because that would have essentially overridden the standard section. So we initially said that we would seek a design alternate, but we can't even say that in a zoning condition. So we had to frame it the way we did, all knowing that we had to come here in order to do the 10-foot wide multi-use path with no sidewalk on the other side. So it's just kind of we couldn't address it any other way any earlier in the process.
And going back to the zoning conditions, the west of the cul-de-sac is the required 10-foot zoning condition.
Yes, just between Chatterson and, because that part is not within a street right-of-way between Chatterson and the cul-de-sac, right, we can just say that, and that's above and beyond the code.
Right.
So we can add that condition, but for the balance of it, to not provide, essentially, we're here because we are not providing a sidewalk on one side.
Right. And, sorry, you might have more questions, but can you elaborate on the context of what that 10-foot lane, 10-foot path connects to?
So to the west, it connects to the Bent Tree neighborhood. Now, those are, call it 20-foot ribbon pavement streets. In this section, ditch section, no sidewalk, but there is a connection to the greenway just west of here. And so, because of the state of the streets, the lack of on-street parking, right, that was a big driver from the neighborhood standpoint to not allow what they saw as cut-through traffic.
Yeah.
Right, but the pavement within that Chatterson Drive right-of-way would lead into our 10-foot wide multi-use path.
Got it. And was you said that the community was okay with the 10-foot multi-use path. Were they preferential to the 10-foot multi-use path versus the 6-foot, or was it?
So the primary focus was not allowing any vehicles.
Got it.
And yes, through the process, right, we were focused on, with them, primarily the 10-foot wide multi-use path between them and the cul-de-sac, knowing that that was really made sense all the way out to Honeycutt. I don't think we really had an in-depth conversation with them about that, but yes, they wanted a 10-foot wide multi-use path in that full connection.
And then, from the applicant's perspective, is there any preference to the 10-foot path beyond the slightly less impervious to the 6-foot on both sides?
Yeah, so the applicant, throughout the rezoning process, was public that this is the option that we wanted. We attempted to say that that was the requirement, was told that we couldn't have that we couldn't mandate that in our condition. We still wanted to evidence to the council, to the neighborhood, that our commitment to doing the 10-foot wide multi-use path. So then we put in a provision in our conditions that said we shall go to the DRC and ask for a design alternate. Told we can't add that language. And so what we arrived at is what there is today. Essentially, you either do what the code requires or you can do this other section unspoken, knowing that we had to come here in order to do the 10-foot wide multi-use path with no sidewalk.
Is there anything about the site that prevents you from doing what the code would require of the 6 foot on either side?
Nothing about, there's no quote unquote hardship of doing 6 on either side. It was when we were requested by transportation during the rezoning process, almost kind of, we're not going to necessarily oppose, right? Transportation staff is in favor of vehicular connectivity, right? But they also know that, and again, we were working with the director and assistant director on this. They understood where Bent Tree was coming from. They said, well, if we're not going to have a vehicular connection, then we want a true kind of multi-use path connection. And so that is when we started working. That was when we were explicit that we will do that if we don't have to put a sidewalk on the other side. And that is when we started working on implementing that and showing that commitment in the conditions.
Got it. There's a note in here from transportation staff with regards to the any potential concerns with the design and there being potential uncontrolled crossings of pedestrians. Anything that you would say to that in terms of how that might be mitigated, or why this design might be preferential?
I'm assuming that's uncontrolled crossings across Street A? Yeah. Okay, just because we've had conversations about crossing Honeycutt as well. So I just wanted to clarify. So, no, but because of the fact that it's a cul-de-sac, low volume, there are only 10 homes on the north side that would not have a sidewalk. And again, right, some of this is hearsay, but we wouldn't be here if transportation was opposed to it during the rezoning process. We talked about this for months. And there was a level of comfort without really any key safety concerns with only 10 homes not having a sidewalk and having to cross the street. And so that's why nothing about that appears in any of the zoning conditions.
Okay. I got one more question on the other alternate request. Anything from the other commissioners on this multi-use path portion?
Do we have any data in terms of usage of, the multi-use path is really meant to accommodate pedestrian and cyclists. Do we have any data in terms of how much cycling traffic we expect coming through here?
So because of a greenway connection, very, close in Bent Tree, we expect that is where, right, the cycling traffic would be going. Right now, there is not a marked crossing across Honeycutt. Now, we, throughout the rezoning process, communicated with DOT, the city had their own conversations directly with DOT to try and get a crossing approved. At the end of the day, it's DOT's road. They have to approve it. We have a zoning condition that says if DOT will allow it, we will provide a high-vis crosswalk with appropriate signage. They said no to that during our rezoning process, but we kept it in there, again, as a show of good faith that if they will allow it at some point in the future, right, during the plan review process, that we'll do that. Those conversations are ongoing. If that crossing were to happen, then I could see cyclists coming from Bent Tree through the site over to Lafayette Village, Lifetime Fitness, right? I think even, yeah.
And this is a little bit of a leading question, and maybe it's a question for transportation. I guess I was wondering what maybe internal discussion there have been in terms of, if I look at this from a pedestrian point of view, it's only 10 lots that have to cross, but it's completely uncontrolled, right? There's no, like they just have to go from their curb or their driveway across the street. So if I think about children, if I think about pedestrians, like day-to-day activity, going on your morning walk, even though it's only 10 lots, that's potentially a lot of a controlled crossing versus the number of cyclists that need to be accommodated through this, this lane. And that's really, so my question really is whether, have you guys explored the 6-foot on either side with potentially, like the 10-foot multi-use converting into 2 sidewalks, and then any cyclist traffic could actually use the road and connect back to the greenway versus
Again,
proposing here?
we're here because there was a strong preference from all the parties involved, and this was prompted by transportation staff during the rezoning that for the 10-foot wide multi-use path, and we made a commitment that we would pursue this throughout the process to implement that. And yeah, Peter, if you want to speak as well.
I just want to add, with the modified cross-section that we have proposed, the opposite side, with the side that has the 10-foot wide multi-use path, on the opposite side, that road shoulder is only 10-foot wide. It will not accommodate the standard 6-foot planting strip with a 6-foot sidewalk. That'll push the sidewalk 2 foot onto private property. So that's really the reason why we're have this design alternate request in.
So in order to accommodate 6-foot sidewalk on that side, you would have to ask for an alternate for a smaller planting strip, for
Correct.
example. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
The only other thing I should have added, because I thought about it when Michael was speaking, is we are still installing the street tree plantings on that side. Even though there's no sidewalk, there will be street trees there.
Thank you.
And we'll invite transportation up in a little bit to speak to that. But Michael, can you navigate back to the plan view that included the Honeycutt frontage? Can you, I'm using 2 different plans from the documents, walk us through that. So if you were using that bicycle lane, behind the curb bicycle lane to get to the multi-use path, how that works at that intersection.
So let me, one sec. So, right,
If you're at the
bicycle
Rue
lane-
Monet
Right.
intersection,
Yeah, so kind of, well, one, let me say there's no sidewalk. I just want to give you the full context here. Right, Falls of Noose Road, right, you've got a big driveway cut there. There's a small section of sidewalk that doesn't even go to the property line of that gas station. There is no sidewalk along that next property, right? And no bike lane, right?
okay, so the sidewalk and bike lane would be on an island if built.
Correct. Starting at the southern boundary of our property and going to the northern part of our property, that's the only place that you will have. And Peter, I think there is a sidewalk.
In front of the church property.
Yeah, so in front of the church property, you have a sidewalk only. Along our frontage, the only place anywhere on this street, you will have both a sidewalk and a bike lane. To the south,
But it
neither.
won't connect all the way to the south.
That's right, neither a sidewalk nor a bike lane. And on the gas station, part of a sidewalk, no bike lane.
Okay.
So that part of Honeycutt, we're just kind of setting up.
Understood.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I'm asking is because one of the maps shows a pavement connection between the bike lane and the multi-use path, and one of the maps does not. So I just want to confirm that.
You're talking about here at the southern, or kind of where the sidewalk comes from the south, headed north, and then where the multi-use path kind of runs into that?
Yeah, so if you were using the multi-use path, how would you then get to the bike lane? It looks like there's a pavement that you could take from the sidewalk to the bicycle lane.
Yes, there is that pavement connection, and again, can't draw on it.
It's
but-
probably hard to see. But yes, between the multi-use path that connects to the sidewalk, and then there's a 5-foot concrete strip
Okay.
that'll provide access to the bike lane.
Understood. On the landscape plan, there's not that connection, so I just wanted to confirm that.
Oh, it was missing? Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying? Okay.
And-
We'll make sure that that's there.
Okay.
The, and then in terms of the utility pole that's causing the bump out, the reason why that is a more acute bump is because to stretch it further would affect the tree planting. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're trying to fit the spacing.
Yeah.
Usually for large trees, it's a 40-foot on center. So we just want to make sure that we're providing, for that gap.
Got it.
Right. And also, one, it's a DOT-controlled road, and two, wanted to send a bike lane away from the street as opposed to closer to the street
Yeah.
for that segment.
I just mean it's not like the reason why the curvature is more pronounced there, and it might just be the scale of this map, is because you're trying to fit it between the street trees.
Did you talk to the utility about potentially moving that pole so it all could work out?
We have not talked to the utility company. I just know that moving power poles it's a significant expense. So that's something that, is considering in what we're doing. In fact, as far as Honeycutt Road, the agreement is that we will match the existing cross slope and curb line that's in front of the church. And that's because there's existing power poles within that strip between the curb and gutter and the sidewalk. There's power poles there too. And this allows us not to have to move power poles. Again, that's a significant expense if that was to be required.
It's worth a call or 10 calls to try and get to the right person, but in my experience, if you can get to the right people, it's actually not that difficult to get them to move the pole at their expense. So
Well-
you might want to give it a shot.
We'll certainly ask. I mean, if it's something that will be done at no cost,
Yeah.
of course.
Other questions for the applicant from the commission?
Will, am I allowed to ask questions? Okay.
I'm pretty sure non-alternates that aren't participating in voting, what's the best point of procedure here?
If you'd like the member to ask a question, you could treat the member as a member of the public.
Oh, that's okay. It's all right.
Okay, if you're all right, thank you.
I just want to clarify one thing from earlier. If you had to go with the 6-foot sidewalks on both sides of Street A, would you need any design alternatives? Okay.
No, we are here because the 10-foot wide multi-use path was what was asked of us and supported throughout the rezoning process.
Okay, seeing no further questions from the commission, we'll transition to the next portion. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on this case? Seeing none. Commission, any questions for staff? If there's, Kevin, if you're here, can speak to this. Again, if you'll state your name.
Good evening. I would like to swear in two of us, Michael Lamping and myself. Good evening. Kevin Kidd. I work with the City of Raleigh, Transportation Review Supervisor, 222 West Hargett Street.
Hello, I'm Michael Lamping. Also work for the City of Raleigh Transportation Department as a Senior Review Engineer, 222 West Hargett as well.
And do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Great. Let the record indicate that they indicated in the affirmative. I think you've probably been following along to the conversation on, the questions related to uncontrollable, crossings, 10-foot path versus, 6 foot on both sides. And
Sure.
if you could just speak to that.
Absolutely. If I may, I'd like to open up with that much of the testimony from Mr. Birch as related to transportation staff comments we cannot testify to. Those persons are not in the room. The director, the assistant director were noted. We did not have notice that they would be brought up. So if asked questions as related to that, it will be a struggle to answer those. So just wanted to note that.
Okay.
Not contending anything's incorrect.
Understood.
But there you go. With regard to the Honeycutt crossing, Mr. Birch is spot on. Staff took it to them, to DOT, to chat about it. Initial feedback is this an uncontrolled crossing? And there would be concern with pedestrians coming across that road from the shopping center. And where everyone saw value in that, the concern of sending folks across the street without any kind of control, stoplight mainly, right, would be a concern. Recently, and Mr. Birch is not aware of this conversation, it's been ongoing. Recently has come up that NCDOT would potentially like to revisit that. And so we have a meeting coming up. We're trying to schedule and talk more through that. Often items like this, if I may offer this, staff often looks at this at time of permit, where you're getting DOT's feedback and those kind of items. So unfortunately, we can't report out the findings because we haven't had a detailed discussion regarding that crossing. With regard to the zoning condition, it is my understanding in speaking with my management that staff initially wanted the stub to go through. And then there were discussions points about a multi-use path. How this is relevant to this case is that oftentimes in our code, for example, stub streets block perimeter, a way to lengthen that block is through pedestrian connections as a whole. What our code notes is 10-foot wide multi-use path. That is what you see here. From a maintenance perspective, if you taper that down into a 6-foot sidewalk, it makes maintenance inherently more difficult, and it reduces the capacity of pedestrians to walk back and forth. So staff would have concerns with reducing that. The zoning condition, as Mr. Birch stated, it can't change the streetscape. We're in concurrence in that. In the rezoning conditions, to Mr. Birch's point, it notes 6 and 6 or a 10-foot multi-use path extending from east to west. The contention of staff is that if we're doing a 10-foot multi-use path, on one end, the expectation was if that was going to be the case, that it go all the way to Honeycutt Road. So those are important distinctions in how we arrived at that. So that's a lot. With any of that, is there any questions or thoughts?
And maybe you're going to address this, but the main question I have is, there's a transportation note here of potential concerns with the uncontrollable crossing occurring on the road, the east-west road,
Right.
and that the condition of 6-foot sidewalk on either side would be a safer condition versus having a 10-foot multi-use path.
I think in this context, with a low-speed road, you don't necessarily need a controlled crossing. It's 25 miles an hour. It's a cul-de-sac. As far as you were saying in the condition, you saw that, or you're asking a question? I'm sorry.
As included with the materials for this case is a staff form here.
Yeah.
That indicates a potential mitigation here of a 6-foot sidewalk on both sides being preferential.
I believe I had said a 6-foot 6-foot sidewalk on the alternate side of the street. So potentially the 10-foot and the 6-foot was my comment.
I'll make it as simple as possible. 10-foot multi-use path will continuously along the southern side of the street.
Yes.
Or 6-foot sidewalk on either side connecting to the 10-foot connection. Which of those would be seen as the safer preferred connection, inclusive of all of the considerations here at this site?
but not 10 foot and 6 foot. That's not an option. And,
That is not an option that was presented this evening.
What I would say, if I may interject, avoiding crossing a street is a safer option overall in general, right? Similar to what we've spoken to prior. Typically in neighborhoods like this, our standard detail is to run sidewalks down both sides of the street and have crossings without crosswalks before you get to the cul-de-sac. That is a standard practice and accepted design of the city of Raleigh per standard detail.
Okay. I'm not trying to put you guys in the hot seat. I'm just trying to navigate conflicting things that are being said.
And maybe another question for Kevin. The upcoming conversations with DOT, would those affect what's happening on this street, Beauchamp Court, at all?
The only impact from those discussions is if long-term there was some look at signalization. Is there some adjustments we would work through with Mr. Knosson, the design engineer? Are there some particular easements that may be discussion? That may come up. But as far as the street proper, what's happening internal to the street, I don't anticipate any impacts there.
Okay.
Kevin, one more. Could you clarify the point on the desire to have the 10-foot path go all the way to Honeycutt? Does that mean you want 10 feet of multi-use path on Honeycutt Road itself?
No, sir, that's not what I'm speaking to. What the developer is currently showing is a separated facility on Honeycutt. We would find that, and should there ever be a crossing there, any potential upgrades to a ramp acceptable.
But what's shown here, which is a continuous 10-foot multi-use path,
Right.
east to west, that is the preferred condition that you were speaking to.
Staff finds this option here to be in close accordance with what the city of Raleigh typically requires when you're pursuing a block perimeter exemption or a stub street exemption or reducing the block requirement.
And you would consider a 10-foot multi-use path only on one side of the street to be a reasonably safe condition for this intensity of use?
To answer your direct question, yes. If I may add, to get to that either way, and you live on the other side of the street, you're crossing the street, unless you go all the way back to Honeycutt Road. So just noting that, but there you go.
With regards to the Honeycutt Road bump, any concerns whatsoever with operation, safety of that bicycle lane with that jog that it would do, or is...
So not offhand, what we do in transportation is we realize that there's subject matter experts around us that we rely on for their different areas. And so we would have a conversation with our bike and ped team. Is there something, an alteration needed here or some adjustment or signage, and work through that with them. To answer your question directly, no, I don't have any current concerns as related to the layout.
Okay. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Any other questions for staff while they're at the podium? Okay. Seeing none, thank you guys. Applicant, anything further?
No, I appreciate Kevin and Michael's testimony there about the 10-foot wide multi-use path, and just want to reiterate, we are here in response to what we heard was a preferred, not just from staff, so let me be clear, but also the residents of Bent Tree, Planning Commission, Council. And we would like to do that option because we think providing a continuous 10-foot wide multi-use path between Chatterson and Honeycutt it benefits the larger area and is consistent with the desired outcome. And so that is why we're here. But If the commission has a different perspective, then we will provide the 6-foot wide sidewalks on either side. That is not our preference. If it was, then we wouldn't be here. So.
Okay. Any further questions for the commission before we close for deliberation? Seeing none, to address who will be voting, Brian, you're the more senior alternate, so you'll be voting, and then Dylan, you'll be alternate. So it'll be Commissioner Schmidt, Commissioner Funkhauser, Stravia, Kyle, sorry. I was trying to remember your last name. All right. Okay. Hearing no additional questions or presentation of relevant facts, the commission will now close the hearing and bring the matter to the table. And if someone could please navigate us to the findings for this case. We can certainly start to go through the findings, but, any thoughts here on what's presented? And
I'm gonna bring up the easy one first.
Sure.
This is with the electric pole, the power pole. I think it's at least worth the discussion with the power company about whether or not that's movable. I mean, they do, I mean, I totally understand that there can be difficult to work with sometimes, but I think it's worth at least trying and asking the question before saying we're gonna do it on it for that. Sharp.
I agree with that comment, but I also would not make it a condition.
yeah,
Just knowing,
I heard, what I heard was Steph say that they're not concerned in terms of safety or operation with that configuration. I agree, absolutely. Removing or relocating the pole would be advantageous, but it's not a thing that I would hold this case up on if there's not a safety concern.
Yeah, I generally agree. Do your best efforts to relocate the pole, but this looks like a mistake. And I think we need to stretch out that arc if that ultimately is the solution. If there's a concern about soil volume for the trees, I think you could use the sidewalk details that show the route pathways under the sidewalk, but I think that needs to be stretched out a lot. It just looks like somebody made a mistake, and it will always look like that.
Dave, to that point, would it be better to remove trees or adjust the spacing to have the same number of trees to be able to elongate that arc? And if you can speak in the mic, sorry.
I think it'd be better to keep the same number of trees and adjust the spacing that urban forestry would have to weigh in on, and they've got their acceptable workarounds around utilities if it can't move. But I just look at this plan right now, and I don't see a big issue with stretching that arc out a little bit, making it a more subtle meander.
Other landscape architects, Claire, thoughts on that?
Some of the specification at the Cercis canadensis, I think, is a smaller understory tree. I don't think it would really suffer from reducing the root zone. The sourwood might get a little bigger, so I think it would be a question for urban forestry. But I think if the streetscape here does not call for canopy trees that need extensive, really planting space, I don't think that it looks like maybe 18 inches difference over an extra 15 feet would make much difference, and it might be worth stretching this. I think it'd be worth for aesthetics generally, so that doesn't look like a mistake, but I think for comfort of bikers not having to jog this, I think the trees are more flexible than the pavement.
it may be the scale that I can't quite visualize it, but if it was a sharp jog like that in a bike lane, it would be hard to, bike at speed, and that wouldn't be ideal in a bike lane. Okay. Thoughts on the question of the multi-use path versus the 6 and 6?
I look at the process that went through to get the zoning condition and the number of people that weighed in to the point that a consensus was written into the zoning. We've heard the level of safety is adequate, reasonable, given the volume of lots and the fact that it's a dead-end road cul-de-sac. So to me, it meets the intent of the zoning and is acceptable.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've teased that out. We heard that it was of reasonable safety, and it seems to be that was the advertised condition. And then in terms of the tapering of the landscape strip, that's not a concern that I would have in that small portion of the.
So I'm ready to make a motion to approve that part of it. What motion can we make to fix this wart in the sidewalk? How can we write that?
Yeah, and I'll open it back up here in a second. Any further discussion before you open it to the applicant? Any other parts of this that we should be considering?
I want to say for the record that I do prefer the 6 foot on each side for pedestrian safety versus the 10-foot path, but I'm just going to state that.
Yeah, I would put myself in the personal preference camp as well of which condition I would personally prefer, but I think the evidence presented, they've met the standard to that end. So we'll open the hearing to hear from the applicant and address to the bike lane, if you would.
Yeah, we will absolutely work with transportation staff to have that go at an appropriate curve, right, to make sure that it's a safe and not a very hard jog. And also work with urban forestry to either make sure that the plants that are provided in that area, that the root zones of those are appropriate in that area. Again, I don't anticipate that there's going to be any plants, but we'll work with them on that. And we will also work with transportation on if there is signage desired, to alert cyclists to that jog, then we will accommodate that as well. Yeah, we wanted to be a safe condition there.
Hearing that, would you be willing to, I think you understand what we're getting at here,
Yep.
offer a condition that, the wording of which would be agreeable? You can think about it for a minute, obviously.
Yes, and we're certainly willing to add a condition to do that.
I think the
Again,
feeling,
if you're willing to do the condition in a form of, we will, provide an alignment, in conjunction with staff, while also, accommodating the appropriate trees. Again, because we're in DOT's right of way, right? That's why the trees are where they are and not closer to the street.
are you able to adjust the tree spacing at all on a DOT street?
Well, Michael was hitting where I was going to go, and that is this is a NCDOT street. It requires a driveway permit, an encroachment agreement to do all the improvements within the right-of-way. So, and they review the landscaping for street trees as well. So they could say no. So I think it would be hard to do a hard condition when we don't know what NCDOT will say at this particular time. We usually do not submit permits to DOT until we get to SPR. We're close, but we're not quite there yet.
Pat, can I ask, if we were to approve this tonight with a condition that for whatever reason NCDOT would not agree to, what would be their ability to come back to us?
If I can propose maybe a kind of, if approved by NCDOT, that we would provide the same number of required street trees, right? Because again, they have control over, yes, spacing, but what we will propose is the same number of street trees at a spacing, to ensure the viability of those trees. So that we're not, reducing our obligation in that way.
I don't want to over-engineer any condition. Obviously, that's a thing that we try to get right from an objective level for a viewer to what, is there anything we need to speak to there in terms of how we might, the minimum prescription of elongating that curvature of that bump out or anything like that that we need to do?
You could certainly require that the applicant provide the city, the Department of Transportation, with evidence that they pursued this with DOT. But I don't see how you can actually lock in, this objective measure that they may not be able to meet.
Okay. Obviously, easiest is just remove the utility pole, but.
Well, and that has implications up and down, right? But I think what we can commit to do is, for our planting plan at the time of SPR, is to propose the required number of trees at a spacing as close to city standards and in a manner, whether it's the type of tree that would be viable in that area. Again, subject to NCDOT approval, right? If they won't allow something, then and we've got to accommodate it in a different way.
Can we come at it from the other way and ask them to work with the approving agencies to provide the maximum practical radii on that bump out, and then they can show the evidence they had that conversation, and during that conversation, urban forestry will weigh in and say yes or no to the trees. DOT will weigh in, say the same thing.
Yep. That's acceptable. Yes.
Okay.
So Pat, for purposes of how that would be structured, that would be a motion along the lines of provide evidence to staff that a alternative design that elongates, maximizes the curvature while potentially adjusting spacing of street trees while keeping the same number of street trees is pursued for NCDOT approval. Is that functionally what we're talking about here?
It is.
Okay. Does that sound right to you, Michael?
Yes.
Okay. Correct. I'd love to get the wording of that exactly right.
I'm ready to replay the video and,
Okay.
and transcribe it. But yeah, that's a challenge. We can run through it word by word.
Okay.
Yeah, and Keegan and Casey, you may want to participate in this to make sure it's something that you can enforce.
Am I supposed to say something?
No,
make that
I'm looking over at staff. Staff, any concerns here in terms of enforceability or with this condition?
I would just note that NCDOT is extremely prescriptive in what they will allow with street trees. I just wanted to put that on the record and realize that they're definitely the final decision maker. Urban Forestry is not here tonight.
Yeah.
And so they would also have some input. But there are prescriptive standards, and the basis for it is, as this board may already know, is clear recovery. And if something is not a breakaway material, which a tree is not, it has to be at a certain distance based on speed.
Which I don't think we're
Okay.
adjusting that clear zone whatsoever with this. But does NCDOT allow for adjustments in tree spacing from their standard configuration?
So they have some input, but once it's out of their zone of concern, I have found urban forestry staff tends to work with the engineers and landscape architects, that NCDOT is not directly involved in this.
Okay.
Can it be as simple as just work with the approving agencies to create the maximum radii possible? Yeah, and then all the agencies will have to weigh in and they can sort it out.
I think we should be prescriptive on who we mean by work with NCDOT, and then it's providing evidence to staff as the objective measure here.
Yeah, well,
I'm fine with leaving out the street tree spacing portion of it.
I'll take a run at this. The applicant shall revise the plan so that the bicycle lane provides the maximum radii possible, subject to NCDOT approval. Right, I mean, that last part is just because everything is going to be subject to their approval.
And in the case where NCDOT doesn't approve it, how does that leave their, on that wording, leave?
Well, and I guess to the maximum extent possible that DOT will approve.
Yeah.
Right, so it's having to find, because this,
We're trying to prevent you from having to come back, to delay
Yeah,
you a month
yeah.
to come back and have this conversation.
I think it's the maximum extent possible, and I don't know if Peter can, right, we're kind of looking at a plan without necessarily having the details of what exactly the curvature is. So if you want to, and I know it's hard with the scale, but
I don't mean to go in maybe in a different direction, but can I offer this? At SPR, we will work with the transportation staff to make any required adjustments in the bike lane or maybe even the sidewalk and in the spacing between to provide as safe a passage for both pedestrian and bike in this plan.
I think that's too general. We're specifically trying to minimize that notch, the bump. So it needs to stretch out as much as the agencies will approve.
Understood.
Yeah.
But if there's an allowance with staff to maybe tighten the spacing between the sidewalk and the bike lane, that helps.
I think
We're just looking for some opportunity to work with staff to make this work.
Okay. Well, then maybe the wording is minimize deviation from the parallel.
right, that's right, minimize the deviation between, of that, call it buffer between the sidewalk and the bike lane. Because at the end of the day, that's the nature of our request, right, is to minimize that to allow for the jog. Reduce it for that jog. But I think the
as
condition
gradual a
is.
jog as possible.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and it hasn't been said, but I know the other issue here is that the trees can't move to the other side of the bike lane because of NCDOT's requirements of where the bike lane has to be.
It can't go towards the street,
Yeah.
but we do have the ability to accommodate those on the backside of the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And we can, locate them there, or at least the ones that we can't fit in the spacing that DOT allows, that we'll provide those on the backside of the sidewalk.
Can we move all of them to the backside of the sidewalk then? Right, 'cause I don't want to come up with just another weird solution. Or move one tree out of the line.
This is not our fault. This is the utility pole's fault.
Yeah, just move the utility pole. Perfect.
Yeah, And unfortunately, it's not just one, right? Because it goes up and down. And I think if it needs to be on the backside of the sidewalk, I'm just trying to.
Well, there may be other plant on that pole too. It may not just be Duke or whomever. It could
Right.
be Charter, et cetera.
That's right. I think here's what we can say. I guess there's still two things. Subject to NC, this is on the trees. Subject to NCDOT approval, we will provide the same number of trees required by the UDO at a spacing as close to the city's standards. And to the extent those can't be accommodated, then we will provide, again, keeping the same number of trees on the backside of the sidewalk. Again, I think our expectation is that is a very small length.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You want to say it? That's what I've said. I still think we just keep it simpler, and your language is flatten that curve out as much as DOT will allow.
yes,
Part of that conversation will decide what the solution to the trees are.
yes.
So then let's just say what you just said.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
The motion, I believe,
Brian, can you speak into the microphone?
the motion, I believe, this is
I can't quite
draft
hear you over
form.
the speaker, sir.
Okay, so the motion is approve the modification with respect to Street A. That's part one. Part two to the motion is to require the applicant, to the extent possible, by working with other jurisdictional authorities, to maximize the radii of the bump out, and to, based on whatever that decision is, to allow for the maximum tree plantings at appropriate distances possible. That's
That's what will happen. I still think you can write it more simply
okay.
to whatever the word is, flatten, straighten, maximize radii. And then the tree conversation will be part of that by nature. So
It's
how do-
implicit within the first
It's
part?
implicit, yeah.
Okay.
So part A was to, I'm gonna try to make a motion to approve
Street
the-
A's request.
Street A with a 10-foot multi-use path. Motion part B, applicant is to, what is the word? Other than flatten? Flatten the bump out around the power pole to the maximum extent allowable by DOT. Mic drop.
Can you repeat that again?
To the maximum extent approvable by DOT.
I'm going to, now that we're back to this, I'm going to close the hearing again for deliberation. Here's where I'm at with, in terms of a condition, which would be a condition the applicant provide evidence to staff that they have pursued an alternative design within DOT that improves and maximizes to the extent possible how gradual the bicycle lane deviates around the utility pole.
I think that works too.
Is that sufficient? Is that a cleaner wording?
Yeah, that suffices.
So I withdraw my motion and use that one?
It's good that you had the utility pole location in there.
So I'll say it again and look for assent here from the applicant and, head nod from staff. Condition that the applicant provide evidence to staff that they have pursued an alternative design within NC-DOT that improves and maximizes to the extent possible how gradually the bicycle lane deviates around the utility pole.
Accepted,
On
yes.
Honeycutt Road. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you all for working through that at the table.
Great. Pat, does that wording sound enforceable?
It does, but why don't we give a nod to staff and make sure that they can implement that?
Staff, if you could provide a thumbs up that
Staff will coordinate with NC-DOT and be able to find their findings. They'll be the ultimate decision makers on that. But yes, we will work diligently with Mr. Knosson at SPR and try to enforce the standards as written.
Okay, but that condition, as I've said a couple of times, that's sufficient to provide objectivity to staff and review?
It does, and just for this commission, it's not uncommon at the preliminary level not to see all the fine details worked out, and we'll do those more permitting, but I really respect all the conversation and appreciate it.
Pat, last thing, do I need to provide any modifier there of, in their pursuit of an alternative design of, diligently, et cetera, type of?
May I ask, could you say more?
I just mean, that the applicant provide evidence to staff that how diligently they need to, pursue that alternative design.
I anticipate that when they come back to staff and have a lack of diligence, things might grind to a halt.
Okay. You feel like my wording's sufficient there to
Yeah, it is,
give
yes.
staff flexibility?
Thank
All
you.
right. All right. Okay, I will make the motion then, and so I will move that to run through the findings very quickly here, but in case of both alternates, approved alternate designs do not increase congestion or compromise safety. I don't believe they create additional maintenance responsibilities for the city. It certainly meets and is consistent with the intent of this article, and does not adversely impact stormwater collection or conveyance, and given and other physical characteristics here is appropriate given the scale of intensity on the site. Does everyone agree with that? Yeah. Okay. So with that said, I'll move to approve the design alternate requested for, let me pull that back up, sorry. For Street A, thank you. And then the design alternate requested for Honeycutt Road with the condition that the applicant provide evidence to staff that they've pursued an alternative design with NC-DOT that improves and maximizes to the extent possible how gradually the bicycle lane deviates around the utility pole. Is there a second to that motion? There's a second. Brian, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Thank you, guys. We got it done. Oh, sorry. Saravia voted in the negative. Thank you. That motion carries. The commission's written decision will be adopted when the minutes of this meeting are adopted, and the written decision will be provided to the applicant and other parties with the right to such notice following the adoption of the decision. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda, we have DA 12, 2025, 10,856 Globe Road. Keegan, if you will present the case.
All right, thanks. So yeah, this is DA 12. Address is 10856 Globe Road. So it's at the corner of Globe Road and what will be an extension of Confluence Drive. And what's being proposed is a Sheetz, so convenience store and vehicle fuel sales use with some associated parking and a drive-through. And the requests relate to transparency. So this is a single-story building. They're looking to reduce transparency on the ground story of the building facade facing Globe Road. So this is both overall transparency and then also the requirement that 50% of that requirement be in the 3 to 8 foot zone. And they are also seeking to reduce transparency along the building facade facing Confluence Drive, both of those areas that I mentioned previously. And then lastly, they're looking to reduce the transparency factor for all of these required windows. So the code typically requires a transparency above 80%. They're looking to install windows with a 38% transparency. Here are the design alternate findings for transparency. So first, that it's consistent with the intent of the requirements, and that second, the building facade utilizes other architectural, artistic, or landscape treatments to create visual interest to offset the reduction in transparency. So that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions or turn it over to the applicant.
Okay. If the applicant will come forward.
Hello again. Michael Birch, Lone Leaf Law Partners, 4509 Creedmoor Road, Suite 302, Raleigh 27612.
Wes Hall, Sheetz, 119 Maltland Drive, Cary, North Carolina, 27518.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Again, thank you, Keegan, for kind of outlining our requests. At the outset, I do want to let the board know that we were here on an identical request that was approved unanimously on January 5th, 2023, as part of DA 28, 2022. But as a result of that ASR ultimately not getting approved and that application lapsing, they had to file a new ASR, and so we are back requesting the same design alternate that we did prior. As Keegan mentioned, we have one request related to the Globe Road facing elevation, one to Confluence Drive, or two, both for the 0 to 12 and 3 to 8. And then for those windows that we are counting towards transparency, that those be provided with a 38% transparency and that external reflectance, which is different than what the code requires. But again, all of this request is the same as the last time. Again, here we are off of Globe Road, so we are west of the Briar Creek Shopping Center area. See the elementary school to the southeast there, Durham kind of just west along Globe Road. Zoned CX3 with a parkway frontage, right? That parkway frontage requires the building to be set off the primary street, which is Briar Creek Parkway / Globe Road, with a street protective yard and landscape buffer along that primary street. And this is just a plan if we need to refer to it, that created the parcel. And you'll note there that there is that existing even 50-foot wide protective yard. This is the site plan here, zoomed in, Globe Road to plan, on the bottom of the page, Confluence to the right. Again, so the elevation facing the gas pumps is one of the elevations we're talking about. And then the east facing towards the drive-through lane is the other elevation. And again, that's landscape plan if we need to refer to it. This shows, one, the front elevation on the top the one on the bottom is not one of the ones we're talking about. I just wanted to include these. There's a page with both of them that we're talking about here in a moment. So let me just get to that. This is the elevation facing the pumps. We kind of have our data there. And then this is the elevation facing Confluence Drive. So as we're talking about that, wanted to kind of let you all know what is driving the request, right? And it is largely the internal layout of the building. So the primary entrance is there in the kind of bottom left-hand corner. There also is an exit entrance there on the Confluence facing side. For that area facing Globe Road, right in the bottom right-hand corner, that is the takeout cooler, called the beer cave. And then along the rest of that building wall is where a lot of the drink machines, coffee machines, food racks are provided there. Along the Confluence side, again, you have that portion of the takeout cooler, and then you hit the restrooms, the men's restroom there, and then the back kind of utility room there. So again, this is Globe Road facing area. Where you see the sign on the far right, that's the cooler. And the windows that you do see provided, those are along that segment where those countertop food, drink is provided. Again, the percentage of transparency here, right, from the, well, here, let me go to Confluence next, just to show you this. So, again, moving from right to left, we have the utility area where those three windows are. Those are high because those are right into the restroom area. And then you have on the left-hand side of the door where that red glazing is, that is the beer cave. One of the things that we talk about, and one of the reasons that is driving this request, particularly along the elevation facing Globe Road, is that in order to meet that full percentage of transparency and really that translucency, that would have a great impact on both the customers and occupants of that building, as well as all of the drinks, food products, et cetera, setting on the counter along those windows. And so the glass that we are providing allows essentially absorbing a lot of that heat. Again, this is a description of the window glazing treatment. So it still allows light into the building, but reduces the amount of solar heat entering the building. Pardon me. So again, on the Globe Road side, this side here, right? So we comply with the overall amount of transparency in that 0 to 12-foot area. Again, if we get to count the windows with the translucency that we are asking for. It is that 3 to 8 foot area that we have a deficit. So that 3 to 8 foot area, the 3 foot area essentially starts at the top of that lower band of stone there. And it goes to essentially, you can see the dashed line through the awning, right? And so, and then let me touch on the Confluence Drive facing elevation. Again, this request is both for the 0 to 12-foot zone as well as the 3 to 8. Again, and that is largely driven by what is on the inside of the building and not able to accommodate views and that level of translucency into those areas of the building. Before I go into the standards, I just want to ask Wes if you have anything else that you want to add. Not that you need to.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So on this, just want to note that we are providing 43% within that 3 to 8 zone, which is about 7% less than that 50% standard. On Confluence, we are providing 13% transparency where the standard is 33%. And again, the windows being provided, again, we're asking to have that translucency and external reflectance that varies from the UDO requirements. So addressing the standards for transparency, again, the intent of transparency is one, to lend visual interest to those street-facing facades for both pedestrians and building occupants and to minimize blank wall area. So because of the parkway frontage and the other site layout, right, this building is located far away from both of those public streets and separated from those streets by vegetated buffers, including that 50-foot wide protective yard along the street. We also have in that cross-hatched area along Globe Road, that is our tree conservation area. So the level of transparency, the amount of transparency will be minimally perceptible, certainly from pedestrians on sidewalks of those public streets, again, as well as the building occupants, given what is going on inside the building. The proposed type of glass will improve the level of comfort for those inside the building, both customers and employees, and will make the building more energy efficient. And by having that level of translucency, it allows us to have those larger windows and still allow daylight into the building, given that lower level. The second standard is that in lieu of the transparency, that those building facades utilize architectural, artistic, or landscape treatments to create visual interest to offset that reduction. Again, in terms of as to those along Globe and Confluence, we have tree conservation area, street trees, and vegetation along both of those rights-of-way. Also on these two, the architectural treatments, we have the awnings over those windows. We also have the awning over the entrances. We have added different materials on the facade at the lower band, the middle, and then again with different colors and treatment of the roof line. And then again on the top of the page is Confluence, where we also have those awnings, band, brick, and then the different color of the roof line. And then the cupola at that corner provides additional visual interest. I'll also say that we also have glass above that 12-foot line. So it's not counted within our required area, but it is still provided on the building and provides that visual interest. Apology. Keegan, I don't know if you have the standards to put up through your presentation. Right. Yeah, so just wanted to have those up for you there. Those are the only two applicable to transparency at this time. But myself, Wes Hall, here to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions from the commission? I just want to confirm one thing in the third design alternate requested. There's an 11% external reflectance that meets the 15% minimum standard or maximum standard, correct? Or is that wording wrong?
Let's see. Keegan, if you want to touch on that.
It's just the transparency portion of it.
Yeah, it's just the transparency. I just worded it like that because I think they were trying to reflect the fact that they're exceeding that part of the requirement because they're paired together in the UDO.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Reflectance and transparency.
And then, Michael, just, you said this, but to confirm it in more certain terms, there's no material differences from this design alternate request from what was previously in front of this commission?
That's correct. None at all. I think really the only difference is that they now have, these elevations are now showing a simplified signage package. That is the only difference between these elevations and the ones that were part of the prior approval.
What does that mean, simplified signage package?
Yeah, just talking about the sheets copy above the doors. It's been rebranded. It's actually smaller than was previously on there. Few of the, the yellow that we previously had on the signs, we've removed that, simplified it to just the sheets. So that's the only material change.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Chris?
Yeah, I've got one. I know we've seen a few sheets, and I don't recall this one, so I don't know if I was here before or not, but could you speak to why you oriented the building the way that you did and didn't mirror it on the site so that the side with the entrance with more glass faced confluence? Like, what challenges does that present?
In other words, why not flip left to right in its orientation?
Right.
Sorry. Yeah, so the reason that it's really oriented this way is mainly driven by our drive-through offering at this site. In order to make that function, as well as be able to have our fuel delivery and our inventory delivery trucks circulate safely around this site and navigate it safely, that's really what's driving the orientation here.
Just to identify, so the north side of the building, right, you see the drive-through lane, kind of a long confluence, and then it comes behind that building on the north side.
Chris, do you have a follow-up question?
Good. I don't know. It just seems that the building could still function. I mean, and that's why I ask, like, what are the other challenges that are presented if you were to mirror that building on the site? Because it seems like that the drive-through lane could flip to the other side without too much impact. Still keep the trash on that west side. Right now, that drive-through line is kind of, they're stopping and then having to cross over traffic in order to get to that drive. It seems a little messy.
Yeah, there are a couple other things. It would be atypical for us to have this drive-through offering building mirrored. We typically only orient it this way. The other item that would come along with doing that is the fact that the end of our drive-through queuing would be at the connection point of our internal drive coming in, where our drive-through queuing would be. And so were that to extend out from there, it could present a safety problem at that shared access drive.
Yeah, and I'll note that the streets that you see, right, so Confluence as well as the private access north of the building, those are essentially set by the other, they kind of call it master developer of this area, right? So Sheets is kind of taking the site as it is in terms of both the location of Confluence as well as the private drive behind it. There is also already, as part of a prior subdivision plan, a limitation on the location and type of access onto Globe Road. So that was, again, restricted and located in that way years ago prior to, years ago prior to this, even the first subdivision.
That's
thing
correct.
coming in.
And the developer, the master developer who's doing that, or who is permitting the infrastructure, they have an approved ASR as well as now they're in for SPR review with that plan that is referenced in this plan.
That answer your question? Sure. Okay. Seeing no other questions. Are there any members of the public who are here this evening to speak? Seeing none. Staff, any questions for staff? Anything further from the applicant? No. We will now close the hearing and bring the matter to the table. If someone can navigate to the two findings for us, thank you. I'll kick us off. Obviously, we see the light transmission thing occasionally here. And we've talked a bit before of whether that needs to be an adjustment of precision on, the visible spectrum versus other things. Obviously, the intent here is to provide that visual interest, which I think this absolutely does, and has other architectural treatments, as noted by the applicant, to get to that end. It's a sizable deviation from the requirement. So do we feel like the other architectural treatments and other things are sufficient in this case?
I kind of believe that there's still a little bit of room to go on the side that I think it's the Confluence side that did have the more windows. Like I feel like it's about 6 feet-ish off the ground, which is not exactly a human scale. And I know that's not necessarily the intent, but and the equipment beyond might be, part of the reason for not bringing the glazing down. But I think there are ways to mitigate what you see beyond and still increase the glazing there. That does not address the side of the restrooms, though, and I mean, I also kind of wonder if there is, maybe a non-standard plan layout that could, reconfigure some of the things and still address the driveway concern. That would be a significant redesign.
I guess for the purposes of who's deliberating on this, we've got 1, 2. So we lost Brian. So Dylan, I believe, now would be the most senior alternate. Thoughts from the commission before we potentially open it up to address that? I'd, repost my question of, are the architectural treatments here, which we see these requests often from sheets, they do bring more of the architectural elements than, others that we see asking for similar requests. Is it sufficient to get to the intent of, visual interest, or is it truly transparency that in its maximum or minimum requirement that we need to get to? Chris, anything before we open it back up to the applicant? No? Okay. I'm going to reopen the hearing. If you could just address again that confluence side and any capacity there to increase transparency.
Yes. So just wanted to speak to those 3 windows that were kind of higher. Those are windows, kind of call it directly into the men's restroom. And so that is why they are at that height. But instead of not having any windows there, we tried to provide some transparency by doing that at a certain height, even though it's into the restroom there. On the, let me see, go back to the site plan here. Wes, if you just want to kind of speak to the drive-through issue and why, again, from a circulation standpoint, right? I mean, this access point off the private street, and why the flip doesn't work, if you can.
Yeah, just as I was saying before, if you can see where that the private access drive comes in, were the drive-through to be over there, we would just create a conflict that we otherwise could avoid. Having the queuing where it currently is, if it did back up, which our queuing is not excessive with our drive-through, but just planning for that contingency of having more than we planned for gives them a more safe option to sit within the site. In terms of the building design, we don't currently have an option where the restroom, our utility access, and items aren't on that side of the building, and just in order to provide more transparency there. So we did provide the faux windows there just for the articulation and visual interest, to try to increase that as well. So.
Yeah, and I think as Mr. Chair, you mentioned, y'all seen a fair number of sheets. And I think based on the feedback from, again, commissions past about the level of understanding the building layout, but also giving sheets direction about other architectural features that can be added, those have been incorporated in all kind of their future and subsequent elevations in Raleigh. So.
Thank you. We'll close the hearing again. Any discussion? Would someone like to make a motion or a condition?
I think I feel pretty comfortable with the alternate request. It feels like it's thoughtful and set back from the street in terms of, I think, what we're losing in transparency. We do have in landscape buffers. Maybe my only question for the commission is whether the red fake glass should perhaps be a different color to just kind of stay in line with the rest of the facades. The red and the glazing offer contrast. The red awning and the glazing are contrasted with each other. So if we wanted to kind of mimic the effects of the transparency at elevation, perhaps that pattern glass could be a dark blue or something so that there's contrast between the red awning and that, if we wanted to.
It's a good thought. As the presentation was going on, I was trying to remember if we've seen that specific glazing before or not, or whether it's been spandrel or something. That's more of a taste thing to me, but it is also to the trying to mimic transparency. Does that red vinyl or whatever it might be do that or not?
It's hard to know because it's a flat elevation. That would just be in the interest of mimicking transparency, maybe a different
Yeah.
color.
Any other thoughts on that, architects? Kyle, I'm looking at you.
It looks like they're really leaning on that as a branding opportunity. I'm not bothered by it, not crazy about it, but I think the other treatment on the main elevation facing Globe, there's a lot architecturally going on that I think does attempt to address the requirements of the UDO in lieu of the transparency that they're not meeting. I don't really take any issues with what's presented.
I'll keep moderating here, but would love a motion or a request there with regards to the proposed glazing there.
I don't know that I feel strongly enough about it to make it a condition. It's maybe just a suggestion for the applicant, unless any of you feel like it should be a condition.
I feel strongly that it shouldn't be a condition. So I'm of the opposite point of view due to the branding and the fact that it's not going to increase any sort of transparency.
All right, well, let's ask the applicant and then let's proceed forward. So I'll reopen the hearing. Is there any capacity there in terms of what that, is that just exemplary of what it could look like? Is that exactly what it's proposed to look like?
Yeah, so that is actually what we currently use. And just to give you a little bit of color on these faux windows are essentially shadow boxes. They're, 3 to 4 inches deep with that panel inside. The window opens from the outside, so that panel is inserted there. And then there's lighting on the inside to kind of give you that depth that's hidden from the outside. So this is a treatment that we currently use on our prototype whenever we have to use faux windows. We have used others in the past. So, yeah, we can certainly look at doing another treatment inside that faux window.
What's pictured here is what it would look like more or less in terms of the intended design?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. In the past, they've been more kind of vibrant, more selling, more marketing based. They've toned that down. The discussion at the last time was about whether this was being proposed, whether it should be this or spandrel, and the commission went with, kind of this treatment here. That was the discussion around that type of treatment during the last hearing.
Would this, if that space couldn't be used for advertisement, right? That would run afoul of the...
Well, unless Keegan corrects me, I think there is still an allowance for advertising to occur inside the window. I think there's some limitations on that now. So there could be some level of advertising, but I think what we're showing here with no advertising would be, we wouldn't be able to change that out for advertising.
Okay.
Yeah, and to be clear, we have not used that for advertising or switch. We don't really plan to switch that out so long as, City of Raleigh's happy with it, so.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to close the hearing, and we'll entertain a motion here.
A motion to approve as presented.
Is there a second?
A second.
Kat? Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed? Nay.
Okay, Commissioner Roberts. That motion carries. Commission's written decision will be adopted when the minutes of this meeting are adopted, and the written decision will be provided to the applicant and other parties with the right to such notice following adoption of the decision. Thank you. All right, last case of the evening is DA. Do we need a break? Okay, yeah. Let's take a quick 5-minute break before starting this case. So we will reconvene. It is 6:41 now. We'll reconvene at 6:47.
last case this evening, this property is located at the northwest corner of Lumley Road and Interstate 540. The address is 10100 Lumley Road, and the property is zoned office park, 12 stories, conditional use, and it's located in the Special Highway Overlay District and in the Airport Overlay District. The applicant is proposing to construct a 7-story hotel with about 235 rooms and serviced by a surface parking lot. The applicant has applied for 3 design alternates. The first 2 are for relief from the Avenue 4-lane divided right-of-way dedication and streetscape requirements for both Lumley Road as well as for Arco Corporate Drive. You've seen these earlier this evening. There's 6 standards that need to be met in order to grant those 2 design alternates. The third design alternate request is to locate the proposed solid waste service area between the building and the street, and you'll see that here outlined in that red box. The service area screening regulations require that service areas be located to the side or rear of buildings and be screened from adjacent properties and the right-of-way. And they must be screened by a solid wall and gate at least 6 feet tall. There are 4 findings that need to be satisfied in order to grant the design alternate for service area location. Myself and city transportation staff are available if you have any questions.
Great. Thank you. The applicant will please come forward to present the case.
Yes. Good afternoon, Michael Birch, Longleaf Law Partners, 4509 Creedmoor Road, Suite 302, Raleigh 27612. Just going to try and roll with just me.
Sounds good.
Get out of here. All right. At the front end, Lumley Road, Arco Corporate Drive, worked with transportation. We are confident that we can deal with these things administratively. So we are, based on that conversation, which is consistent with what we heard in the pre-app, but didn't get confirmation until close enough to the hearing. So we're going to rely on that and move forward with the dumpster location.
Okay, so just to confirm, you're only requesting now the
dumpster location. Yep. We'll deal with that. Okay. Just kidding.
Okay.
So we can withdraw Lumley Road. We'll focus on Arco Corporate and the dumpster location.
Okay, so 2 and 3.
Yes. Sorry for the confusion. So property here, 540 Lumley Road, right? Briar Creek Shopping Center to the north, airport to the south, southeast across 540. As you can see, if you look kind of in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see Arco Corporate, and you see it terminate in kind of that octagonish end. That is the end of public right-of-way of Arco Corporate Drive. The rest of Arco Corporate Drive, which you can see is constructed out to Lumley Road, is on private property. The reason for that is because all of that private property is still owned by Ward Transformer. That site is heavily contaminated to the point at which when this master developer was going through the subdivision process in the early to mid 2000s, and it got to the point of plan approval and dedication of right-of-way, the city refused dedication because of the strict liability associated with the environmental issues of that property. So nearly 20 years ago, the city refused to accept the right-of-way because of those issues. Now, as a concession or to keep that option open, the city retains an option to purchase that area when and if they want. But that's kind of on the assumption at some point that the environmental issues and the liability, essentially a no harm to the city, would be in place. However, Arco Corporate Drive is designated on the comprehensive plan as a particular street type, which would typically require dedication of that right-of-way. But there is no right-of-way existing there today. The city has refused acceptance of right-of-way. And there is, for the portion of Arco Corporate that traverses this property, there is a standing option for the city to purchase, if and when. So in that area where we would otherwise dedicate, the city has an option to purchase. And again, that portion of Arco Corporate Drive, because it's owned by private entities, there is a public access easement over it, but that portion of the road owned, maintained by the Briar Creek Corporate Center Association. So the city does not maintain that road, has nothing to do with that road. Again, this is just a zoom in of the site. Again, you can see that there are already sidewalks on either side, fully constructed. Well, let me just stay on, so we are asking for, because it's a comp plan street, we have to come and ask for a design alternate to not dedicate right-of-way and to not, and then because it's not right-of-way, to not construct to the city's street cross-section standards. Again, that whole street, that portion of the street is subject to a number of private documents that govern the design of that street, improvement and maintenance of that street. I'll move to the dumpster. So this essentially says you can't have your dumpster located between the building and your primary street. Well, 540 can't be our primary. Arco, because it's not public, can't be our primary, which leaves Lumley Road. I want to note that this dumpster location was approved as part of two previously approved plans, one SR 18 2017 and ASR SR 120 2018. Because those lapsed, we're back here with this site plan, and this issue has been identified, and so we are coming forward with this design alternate request. And just to reiterate, this design, the dumpster location has remained in that same location. So we're talking about screening from the street. That's what is driving the intent. Well, here's a kind of aerial and a cross-section of what's going on between Lumley Road, right, kind of the driving surface of Lumley Road, which is about at the edge of pavement. It's about 350 elevation. At first, you have a significant stand of trees located within the NCDOT right-of-way. That's what you see in the blue crosshatched. Then you have on private property I believe it's a 50-foot wide overhead power line easement. On the back side of that, you have existing primary tree conservation area. So you can see we have a significant amount of existing vegetation that cannot, and at least on our property, cannot be touched before you get to the dumpster enclosure. That dumpster enclosure is 10 feet tall, fully enclosed. And so really from a visibility standpoint, and I'll note that call it the finished floor elevation of that dumpster enclosure is well below, right, the elevation of the pavement at Lumley Road. In addition, right, if we're talking about just screening from those coming from the west side of Lumley Road. You see in just the slashed area, that's off-site. All of that is tree conservation area as well. So I'll talk to the standards in just a moment. We also have, on the backside of that tree conservation and retaining wall, which is holding back, we also have proposed tree as well as kind of call them foundation plantings. Again, back to ARCO, right? In 2000, still thought it might be a public street because it's called out as future public street. By the time that we recorded this map as part of our SPR approval of a prior approved site plan. That ARCO corporate drive is now subject to a public access easement and a cross access easement among the private property owners. And so let's see, I'll try and pull up the standards for you here. So I'll touch on landscaping and screening first, right? Consistent with the intent to provide meaningful, well-designed screening. Again, we have the untouchable primary tree conservation area. We also have our landscaping screening along the enclosure and a difference of elevation, which screens it from view from Lumley Road. Does not substantially negatively impact the comfort and safety of pedestrians. Again, Lumley Road, control of access, NCDOT street, no sidewalk in that area. Utilizes other architectural landscaping treatments, again, primary TCA and foundation wall plantings there. And approved alternate is considered equal to or better than the standard. Again, because of the elevation, the existing trees, right? Let me speak to ARCO Corporate Drive. Design alternate consistent with the intent. Again, we have existing regulations, private covenants that require the design and maintenance of that street, which is existing in the city's refused right-of-way acceptance, but has an option to purchase when they feel that they want to. Does not increase congestion or safety, right? That road's existing. Already constructed, so won't create additional maintenance responsibilities because the city doesn't own or maintain it. Lee Weaver, professional engineer on the project, and will not affect stormwater and is reasonable because of the existing physical environment, again, the environmental issues. So happy to address any of the questions that the commission may have.
Thank you. Just a couple quick questions. So just to confirm, basically what you're saying is on ARCO Drive, you're going to leave it as is in terms of its existing condition with sidewalk, all of those things.
Yes.
And basically just keep it as it is today. And today's there's currently sidewalk facility in place. Yes. And then in terms of the dumpster enclosure, you've got the existing vegetation and then CDOT right away, and then is that a 50-foot depth tree conservation? Yep. And there's no future plans for any type of path or anything along that within that NCDOT corridor?
No, that's all control of access, actually beyond where ARCO Corporate Drive intersects. This is right at the bridge of 540. And there's, as seen on the this cut section, the topography within the right-of-way goes down substantially. Right where it starts to go down is the edge of pavement.
Gotcha. Okay, that's helpful. Other questions from the commission? Any questions from the commission on dumpster enclosure or any? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any members of the public that are here this evening that would like to speak? Seeing none. If we could have staff come forward. Yeah, just related to the Arco Drive.
Good evening. My name is Ben Griffin. I'm the Street Maintenance Division Manager for the City of Raleigh. And I'll speak to the maintenance side of things.
Awesome. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And you're already sworn in.
And I'm Michael Lamping. I'm a senior design reviewer for the City of Raleigh. I'll be providing answers in regards to the UDO.
Awesome. Simple question of just, is there any concern here with regards to the proposal, given this is a very irregular situation with the, contamination and the city not wanting to take over maintenance or assume control?
No concerns from my end in leaving as is. As was stated, the city has not done any maintenance on this section, which is about 0.4 of a mile, since it was constructed. There's a few things on this section that would kind of further complicate things for us from a maintenance perspective. There's actually 3 federally qualifying bridges on this section as well that the city has not had an opportunity to inspect or review. So we would want to leave it in the hands of Ward to operate and maintain.
I'll ask a somewhat random question. Is there any concern down the line that the private owner of this could not maintain this street and that could lead to problematic conditions?
I mean, certainly there's any number of situations that could arise that would cause some safety concerns. I don't know what kind of situation Ward is in, so I can't speak to that or what situation the Briar Creek corporate group is in. But, I mean, yeah, there are often concerns that come up on private streets from time to time, and if those concerns are safety concerns, we would ask that they address those if it's a private street. From my perspective, the UDO references private streets and states that they must be maintained to the same standard as public streets.
Okay. Thank you. That's super helpful. Any other, Claire, you got a question?
I do, just for, I guess, our knowledge as a commission, what would happen if the city decided to finally purchase Arco Corporate Drive, make that a public street, but we've already approved for that portion, of the applicant's property to not do the streetscape? Would that then trigger a requirement for them, or would it be forever exempt? I know it's an unusual case, but that might be good for us to know for the future.
I feel like if they were going to upgrade it, it would be an easy gap to fill potentially, right?
That it's a fair question, but it's hard to answer because
too many ifs.
There's too many questions come up in my mind, and I'll just say, if we were in a position to purchase, there would be a lot of questions about, just the bridge structures themselves that we would have to have answered. There would be a lot of questions to what was spoken about the environmental concerns. Have those been addressed? Because at the end of the day, we don't want to risk putting our people in a situation where they could be exposed to some sort of chemical or something that may still exist out there if we have to do maintenance on a storm drain system, or if we have to rebuild a piece of the roadway that's now public right-of-way because we've decided to purchase. Those things would all be concerns, and ultimately, it's very hard to answer your questions, but there would have to be a lot of things brought in to the discussion for us to consider.
Great, thank you. Seeing no further questions, anything further from the applicant?
Just want to highlight where that portion of the property is there in terms of our segment of improvement, right? That is, let me see if I can go back to the aerial. Again, that is where our frontage along that portion of the road, the vehicular travel lanes, the sidewalk, that is largely where our both primary access point, and then there's one restricted to fire and emergency services. But again, if the city wants the right of way, they have the option to purchase, and they've had it for a long time and will continue to do so. So,
thank you. Unless there's any further questions, we will now close the hearing and bring the matter to the table. Someone please navigate us back to findings, probably for the dumpster enclosure. Thank you. Okay, just running down these, consistency with the intent, I think is there. There is substantial screening in place. They've certainly additionally screened the enclosure. I don't think that there are any pedestrians anywhere near the vicinity of this enclosure, or the possibility of them. You didn't touch on this too much, but yes, there are elements there that provide landscaping treatment and interest, and I'd say equal to the standard in this regard. Any thoughts or alternate to that here? Good, great.
I would just say that thank you for providing this section. I guess I thought that was very helpful for the future in illustrating a very specific condition. So.
Yeah, it's a pretty robust screening from their primary road there. And then, sorry, Casey, can you navigate us to the other findings? Great. So I think the big one here is just the extremely irregular physical environment here, i.e. city does not want to own this, nor is it reasonable given the site context and development intensity around it to require additional infrastructure there. So with that said, I feel like both of these are extremely reasonable requests. Any discussion, concerns? So I'll take a motion.
I'll motion to approve as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Craven. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. Commission's written decision will be adopted when the minutes of this meeting are adopted, and the decision will be provided to the applicant and other parties with right to such notice following the adoption of the decision. Okay, that concludes our QJ portion. We do have minutes that we need to approve. Have folks had an opportunity to review those minutes? Are there any adjustments? And if not, I would entertain a motion to approve said minutes.
I actually have a comment because the condition that was written for DA 8, 2025, when I read it, it was really confusing. I actually had to go back to watch the video to figure out what we actually said. And I think, so on page 3, the condition says there shall be, prior to final plan approval, the replacement of one of 3 arborvitae as shown on the proposed landscape plan. And the intent was that it was to the replacement of 1/3 of the arborvitaes. So I think if we could just change that wording from of 1 of 3 to 1/3. And then there was also part of that motion that the tree should have a minimum height of 12 feet at time of planting. That did not make it into the text.
I was not here for that case. I'll look to the rest of the commission in terms of the spirit of the intent there and confirm with attorney, et cetera, if that's a acceptable adjustment.
I think the best course would be to review the recording and ascertain the specific language. I know an effort was made in the minutes to reflect what we thought we heard. No disagreement, though, and why don't we?
So you think
why don't we hit
we
pause
hold
on this?
that particular one, approve the remainder of the? Was there another case on the agenda? Yeah, there was another case. Are we able to approve this in part, or?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem with that.
Okay. Is that sufficient? Okay. Can you make a motion to that end? Sorry. Just if you will restate again what exactly is the difference in motion and ask for a review of the recording and.
Yeah, I think, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with the exception of what was written for DA-8-2025. And I would like to ask for a review of the recording for the exact wording of the condition on that case to be approved at a subsequent meeting.
Is that sufficient? Casey, does that seem viable? Okay. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
There's a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, thank you. And so that brings us to the last thing, which is not on the agenda, which I'm going to propose, which we discussed at the last non-QJ meeting. We passed new bylaws or the equivalent of that for the commission. And with that, our goal is to hold elections in the September-ish timeframe, for which I would say roughly let's try to shoot for that to be around Sir Walter Raleigh Awards, so there can be a chair crossover there. And to that end, I would move that we hold elections for the coming year at our next regular meeting. So along with that, I would say we don't, and chatting with Casey and Keegan beforehand, we do want to talk about legacy projects again. So I think the best time for that is actually going to be at the December 1st meeting. And so I'd say let's cancel the mid-November meeting. Let's meet for the first December meeting to hold elections. If there's QJ that comes through, that we would do QJ, officer elections, and legacy projects that evening, if that works for everyone, and we'll cancel the second November meeting. So with that said, I'll move that we hold officer elections for the coming year to go through approximately September and December, and we'll take nominations at that time too. Any questions? Is there a second there?
Do you want to get nominations ahead of time?
To the extent that I can, I would love that, but yeah. Yes.
Okay. I'll second.
Awesome. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Awesome. Anything further, Casey? Anything further? Commission, attorney? All right. The meeting is adjourned.